Hello, everyone. So, this is our Bitcast one. Yes, we are inventing a new word today, which is Bitcast. Blockchain is all about inventing a new word, and today we are inventing a new word, Bitcast. So, this is our Bitcast one. And I have with me a very special friend with whom I met long time back in 2017, CEO of decentralized blockchain known as DECBC, Mr. Roberto. Hi, Roberto. Good to have you.
Good to thank you for having me. Then thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. So today we will discuss some of the exciting things about blockchain. Briefly, to give a view to the people, what we think, what is an expert view about a certain words of the blockchain. Well, before that, Roberto, I would like to know, how you would enter into a blockchain space and what actually pulled you into the blockchains.
Yeah, I was there by chance, the right moment, the right place. I'm more into decentralization, and I was into decentralization before blockchain was a thing, even before blockchain was at all. Still at the time, Torrent, where that the big difference between a peer-to-peer network that was able to maintain a network up doesn't matter how, compared to other system that had a central server that could be taken down. And that was my interest. I was trying to understand if more than just hosting file could be changed. And I was into some particular news group in Usenet. Usenet is a very old system that was there to communicate with other sort of mail protocol forum discussion group, and somebody sent me the code for what was Bitcoin first attempt, and I installed it. I mined 6 blocks with a notebook at early days, and I formatted everything, so I threw away 300 Bitcoin at the time. A big tragedy. I still cry sometimes. But that was my first moment of exploring blockchain. It still wasn't something that I understood fully and I wanted, but that was my entry point. And then I've been part of a project called NXT Next, which is the first non-clone of Bitcoin proof of stake blockchain study as a decentralized application platform, which went its own particular direction. And after that, consequently, DECBC, 2BC, and then DECBC. So this is a long trip into decentralization, but it's the beginning at the same time.
Awesome. So you are like one of those first, people who have actually understood this technology and able to move it from one step to another step. Interesting, very interesting. Now let's talk very briefly about your current journey also from ZooBC to DECBC. So what is DECBC and which space you are filling it up, in the world of blockchain? Why DECBC? Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, because there are many blockchains, but the world of blockchain is all about cryptocurrencies in general. So as blockchain was born as a solution to create a cryptocurrency, which was Bitcoin, using a system, this proof of work that was studied to prevent spam email. Actually, that's where we come from, proof of work, and applied on this system for this magic internet coin. All the other blockchains that were born are mimicking, copying those security mechanic, and at the same time, blockchain is getting adopted for uses that are not related to cryptocurrency or finance or value of item. And the security model is still based on a value of a cryptocurrency. So when the application of the cryptocurrency, of the blockchain is for something that is not related to value, let's say medical record rather than school diplomas, other things, the security system for the blockchain need to be different in order to provide security, right? So the idea was to implement consensus mechanics that is okay also for non-cryptocurrency uses of blockchain. That was the initial idea, which doesn't mean that you exclude the cryptocurrency. You can also do cryptocurrency, but that's just one application like many others and not the core application.
Correct. Okay, awesome. So nowadays, Roberto, there are many people who are talking about proof of work. From the energy consumption perspective, it is not good for the environment. Ethereum is also planning to move to proof of stake. Sharding is coming into picture. A lot of things are happening. And here you have introduced proof of participation. So, how different is proof of participation? Is it also solving the environmental concern regarding the proof of work, and how secure it is? Like in a very for a normal person like me, if I need to understand proof of participation and how secure it is, what would be your thoughts on that?
Sure. There are several layers of understanding to get to this level. In fact, consensus mechanics are closer to religions than actual science, because many people just have faith in proof of work and defend the proof of work in full without really understanding how it works. So there are two different kind of method to secure a blockchain. First of all, I think it's important to understand what the consensus is for, because the word consensus can be a little bit misleading. As humans, we reach consensus by sitting around the table, discussing and agreeing on a common decision, like where we're going for dinner tonight, and we reach consensus on the restaurant name, right? In a peer-to-peer network, nodes cannot really sit around the table and discuss. Nodes do not even know the extent of the full peer-to-peer network, because each node can connect with a limited amount of other nodes in the full network. So the consensus is a piece of code in the node that should be identical with all the nodes in the same blockchain or in the same peer-to-peer network, which guarantee that in front of an option, A or B, all the nodes make the same choice. So they have consensus because in front of an option, they all make the same choice. And
correct.
This code must be made in such a way that cannot be gamed. The people cannot find a loophole for which they can make all the nodes choose what they want instead of what the node should choose, right?
Choose.
Okay,
correct.
So this is, for example, the classic double spending. Let's say the first option for the consensus mechanics is to choose the next block. If there are options A or B or C for the next block, all the nodes must choose the same block, because that's how the blockchain is consistent in all the network, right? So the first use of the consensus is exactly this. And if somebody managed to convince the nodes to choose his block rather than the one that should be chosen, in this way can manage to reorganize the blockchain. Means rewrite the last 10 blocks, make the blockchain drop the one that they had, adopt the one that is a malicious person made, and in this way can remove a transaction from the last few blocks. So let's say I pay somebody, then I reorganize the blockchain, removing the transaction where I paid this person, and now I still have my money back. If the person paid is an exchange that allow me to withdraw another currency, at a certain point I have twice the money that I had before, and this is an attack that's been performed many times. So the consensus uses some rules to decide which is the best new block, for example, or if a transaction is a good transaction or not, etc., etc. And there are, in my way to organize them, two big categories. The one that use an external source to determine the part of the rules, the one that use only internal sources. For example, proof of work, which is the most famous and the one used in Bitcoin, uses an external source, which is the miner hardware. They create the hash for the next block. There has to be the best one. So anybody can put together as many miners they can and be better than the rest of the blockchain and make a blockchain that is more favorable. So can play the consensus, making the consensus. So this costs a lot of money. You need to fight against the rest of the people around the blockchain. In the case of Bitcoin, it will be like incredibly expensive and useless because you can steal less of what you cost to do the attack. But in minor blockchain, they use proof of work. This has been done many times. For example, Ethereum Classic has been attacked several times with people renting enough hashing power and creating a piece of blockchain that is more favorable to the consensus logic. Other, for example, proof of stake don't use external sources. So like proof of capacity, use many hard drive people can put at disposition to save data. So this is an external source. I can buy overnight a huge amount of hard drives and become more important, let's say. In proof of stake, you use the past history of the blockchain. So how much wealth an account has, and to reach the wealth need to arrive to you through transaction, etc., etc. Now the flow on this side is more the capacity to rebuild the past history. People say, for example, if I get the private key of the initial account of the blockchain because I find the people and I pay them, then I can build an alternative blockchain that is more favorable. The fact is that on this, there is only theory, because never an attack has been done in a proof of stake blockchain, while in a proof of work has been done. Other, they have internal resources. So you look at the past history of the blockchain itself to defend the current blockchain are, for example, proof of reputation, proof of, history, etc. So these are two categories. Proof of participation belongs to the one that look at the past history of the blockchain, but fixes a lot of issues that there are with other consensus. So, for example, the possibility to increase the power of an account in tenfolds overnight. So it's a very slow process, making an attack slow to be performed. Plus, there are a lot of other small things that elect a very small quantity of nodes out of a registry of nodes. So it's a mix of a federated network where the federation is managed by the consensus automatically and not managed by humans. So it's an interesting approach that money doesn't buy the power. Power is achieved just by showing participation. That's what it does.
Absolutely. And this is where I would like to tell you that I don't think so I can ever become a miner for Bitcoin, because the amount of money that you need to invest, to become a miner, buying all that hardware, and we have created a very special spoof on that of Hitler, that how proof of work is not to leak the work, all those things. I mean, amazing. I mean, that's where, so, okay, on this, those who might have heard you still might have few questions. I would like to tell. I would just like to tell them.
I didn't answer your initial question, the pollution and the consumption, because to me it's true that the electricity born to validate Bitcoin is insane. But if that was good for creating a secure system, to me would be
why not?
Okay, exactly. But the truth is that it's actually really a waste, because is supporting something that is flawed in the basic mechanics of how it works. If people didn't take it as a religion, but really reason on the mechanics of it.
Correct.
Those that use internal resources usually are the ones that are more green, if you want, because the mathematics is very basics and is only cryptography that support the strength of the blockchain. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I don't want to start any another controversy, but a very famous American who understood proof of work maybe after 3 months of tweeting his very first thing is support for Bitcoin. Maybe he has understood after 90 days that it uses some energy, and that's why he's not going to support it. But apart from that, I think what Bitcoin has done in the world of blockchain, it's unprecedented. It's something which is exceptional innovation, and still people are grappling up to understand what it is, to be very honest.
To me, it's important to split Bitcoin as the brand to the technology underneath Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin is there to stay, survive, and live for the longest time. It's going to be always the most important cryptocurrency.
Absolutely.
But he has the good chance to change the technology to something that is more secure.
Absolutely.
And less, there is an economic interest around how it works now, which is more political than practical.
Well, all those people who might have heard Rob with all this explanation and still want to read, I will share the link of a very comprehensive book that is also being written by Rob beneath in the comment section of this podcast, which you can download. He's very generous to offer that book free to the entire world, and it is one of the most comprehensive books that I have read so far, Rob. So thanks for that. Rob, okay, in between, apart from this serious stuff, there is a lot of, I need to demystify some of the myths in blockchain, So the one myth which I'm going to take in my very first episode with you is NFT. Is it real? Is it not real? Do you see my cigar? Do you see my cigar in my hand? It's an NFT, I'm going to launch it on Ethereum very soon, and maybe I would be able to sell it in $20,000. I hope you would be able to see the smoke. I can see a very good hat that you are wearing right now. Just please tilt NFT. It like that. Yeah. NFT. No. So what is your view? Is it a myth? It's not a myth. People are making it a big hype. What you would say? What is your thought?
There is a hype, and this is no good, but it's important also for people to understand. I think the beautiful thing of NFT is that it's the first hype on a non-financial use of blockchain, because while they can be sold, but the function of the NFT is to represent the title of something. The point is that people start and end NFT as NFT itself, while mostly when you represent a physical object, it needs to be accompanied by some rule book, some legal contract. A lot of people purchase the famous song thinking that they were having the right on the song. So every time it plays on the radio, at this point they get the royalties, while the person said, no, I'm just selling you this song as if you're buying a disc with the song. So it's never very clear what people purchase unless it's included in the NFT in clear terms. But NFTs existed way long before. There is a TED Talk about NFT from 2017, I think. So
yes,
this is something that always existed, and now suddenly got the hype. And I do believe that I know a little bit of the reason behind the big money ones, because there is some illegal things that can be done that are very easy. For example, let's say I have $2 million of cryptocurrency that is not very well declared or something like this. Then I make your invisible cigar NFT and I sell it to the invisible person for $2 million. Yeah. At this point, I have a clean $2 million, NFT. So in the moment that I had the money circulating back to me officially, where I made the sales of the invisible cigar. So we get a cigar that is worth $2 million potentially, NFT. $2 million clearly in my hand because I made the sale of the cigar. So first of all, we have $4 million out of nowhere. And second, I launder some crypto that, were not very well declared. So I do believe that there are a lot of easy way to clean up some money in the hand of a bigger gallery that had the need to, with the sales of NFTs.
Correct.
But in non-practical terms, NFT, when they represent a digital asset for real, for example, you think in the gaming industry, my daughter, like everybody's kids, have Roblox and she buy the wings that cost like $50. They cost, an actual.
Correct.
So she has her avatar that altogether can be really $1,000 worth. If each of the items that she has, the wings, etc., were represented by an NFT in a blockchain, she actually owned the asset, so she could actually put it in a marketplace to be resold. It can increase value because she won a contest, so it would be the right to own. There was a very interesting, many years ago, one very wealthy person in California, I forgot the name, was creating his will, his, testament. In case of
yes.
And he spent tens of thousands of dollars in iTunes, in the iTunes store for music, etc. And he wanted to leave all these songs in his will. And his lawyer realized that he cannot, you cannot pass the ownership of something. And he was very upset because he says, I did purchase this song. It's like, if I purchase the disc, I'm gonna leave the disc to my kids. Why, if I purchase the song, I cannot leave the song, which is the same thing. Now, if those songs were the right to listen the song, let's say the content management, the DRM was in the NFT, I simply transfer the NFT to the person that I want, and this person can, I cannot listen the song anymore. This person can listen the song. So in this case, the NFT would actually give the physicity of ownership that is free from control of third party, but programmed by the smart contract that manages the NFT, and have a very practical use. So I do believe that the NFT as a concept, because NFT is a smart contract, so can be programmed however you want. But
correct.
As a concept, the NFT is gonna find a lot of application, and the hype that has been created around allow a lot of people to understand what can be done with the blockchain, much more than listening to explanation of boring people with a beard, like the so it's a practical example, and it's straightforward. In fact, in my office, I receive visits of so many different people that suddenly they want to make the NFT of everything, and correctly so, but if the hype wasn't there, they would never think about it. So this is a very good help to move blockchain technology outside cryptocurrency into many other things. So there are very good use of NFTs, in my opinion.
In relation to that, I would also want to understand, and I want our audience to understand, everybody talks about ICO, initial coin offering. Very famous word in 2017 when I was in Malaysia. Companies are launching ICOs like, it's like a sale. I heard a very new term from you, initial node offering, INO. And I'm also a part of the initial node offering, very fortunate to be that. And I bought my node as an NFT. Yep. So just for an education purpose, so that people do understand, how we are using at DEC-BC, the NFT technology for releasing our initial node offerings and making the people the part of that ecosystem. Your thoughts?
So first of all, need to understand what is an INO and why it exists, and then can easily be understood why using NFT for it. First of all, we did this in NFT for DEC-BC in 2020 when NFT was not the hype. Just to say that we use the technology because it's practical to be used now, because was the hype about using it. An ICO is the printing of 1 million coins that, people. There was a very interesting show of this guy that being called in Texas by this ranch owner, promised $1 million to do a work. He went there, and when the guy gave the $1 million, it was in cash with banknotes with the face of the guy in it. So this guy printed his own money, and he said, "Look, this is the $1 million." The guy said, "Well, I cannot use it." The ICO is not different from this. ICO is people printing their own currency, their own token, distributing around with the promise that it's going to be worth in the future, and use it to finance themselves. I find it a little bit borderline with ethics and with normal reasoning.
Absolutely.
It did work. I have friends that collected hundreds of millions with this system, but it's a little bit detached from the project, and is also highly regulated and illegal in many places for good reason, because it's hard to protect consumer when something like this happens. On the other hand, when a decentralized system is launched, a decentralized system, so like something that works on blockchain, is in a peer-to-peer network, does not belong to any person in particular, because else is not really decentralized. It does belong to the people that runs the system itself. So if there is, for example, think about Skype. Skype at the beginning was really just a peer-to-peer system. When you launch your Skype application, you are a node of the communication system. If you were online always with your computer, you become a super node, and communication goes through your computer, right? And you store data for the network because it was fully decentralized. Then it's been purchased by Microsoft, that things have changed a little bit, but let's say there is a peer-to-peer decentralized system where people pay the use of it. The money that is being paid should go to the node that supports the system. So when a system is built, an INO, there is the initial node offering, is a way to finance the project by giving the people the possibility to run a node of the system, because once the system is done, it's not going to belong to a company. So the income made by the system doesn't going to go to one person, one company, but it's going to be really decentralized, need to be distributed between all the people running the nodes of the system. So initial node offering INO for peer-to-peer decentralized system where nodes are going to be the beneficiary and the infrastructure of the service that is going to be launched. So anybody that has a real decentralized system can do an INO, right?
Yep. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Very brief and to the point description. And I do believe, yes, INO is more, I would say, authentic. And it's more not just only legal, it gives you a feeling of that you are associated with the project. And I do check my node every day just to see how many coins I got collected. So this gives me a good, the sense of association. Now, Roberto, I just want to touch about one last thing and one very important thing. The project which is going on under Decentralized Blockchain, TechBC. If a blockchain enthusiast has to become a part of this project and contribute, what are the ways how he can contribute and how he can become a part of this mission of actually decentralizing the blockchain?
Right. So DECBC is the second stage of a 5 stages project that is work to decentralization. The aim is to decentralize important applications. So we don't follow the road of the smart contracts per se, but we allow more consistent important application to be decentralized. This is a very interesting approach. So the first step was DECBC that went from a conceptual to something practical. The mainnet started in March. People can download the mobile application. There is web application. People can create account, but it has basic things that any blockchain has. Actually, it has something more because there are a few particular functionality that are not there in other blockchains, but it's nothing special, let's say, in terms of innovation. The second step is to bring this technology to another level. It already has inside all the bases to build up. And we are doing an INO for DECBC, which is going to finance this work. And the work is going to be with developer and the open source community, because going from a concept to something tangible, people need to sit together, put in cage like a zoo. That's DECBC.
Absolutely.
In the second phase that we already have something tangible to work on, we are in a decentralized mode. So we decentralize also all the process, both on the steering committee for the decision making, to the open source community for coding, to the, we have a foundation that acts as a point in between, but the project should belong to the public already at this point. We have a vision and a direction to put. So I do believe that this is a good karma tool for people that made a fortune with Bitcoin and other Ethereum and other cryptocurrency to give back to the community. Support the innovation of the technology, which is a technology that allows you to make a lot of money before. Donate or purchase nodes of DECBC, and you can go sleep in peace with yourself that you gave back to the community, right? Correct. To the whales to support the project.
Absolutely. And I think we have got a good support, and now it's the time when we need to build this second phase. So all the very best, and I'm 100% sure it will succeed. Just before we wrap this up, I just want to show the book of you that is being launched by you. new strategies on
Strategies.
blockchain. Yep.
A
I will share
second
the link
volume,
of
a
this.
second volume is in the making, new strategies in decentralization, and
Okay.
it's gonna be the volume 2. There are gonna be 5 volume totals in the 5 steps.
Awesome. I think there are many universities across the world who would be probably looking at a material, searching for a material for their students. I think that could be a good volume to be introduced into their
They
curriculum.
only pay for shipping. We send them the books for free. So
Awesome.
just
Awesome.
contact
Awesome.
us, only pay shipping of the courier, whatever it is. Books are on us. It is important that people learn and understand the decentralization. The PDF version is for free. People can download it. The physical book to study on and to keep is available for university, for associations that they want to just contact us.
Okay, awesome. I will share that point of contact and one email ID, marcom@deckbc.com. If you have any queries, please write on that email and we would respond to you within a day. Thank you, Rob, for your time. I think that should be enough for our Bitcast 1. Very soon we will come up with Bitcast 2, which is going to be the online session where our audiences can ask questions to us. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for spending some time with us and giving us so much information. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.